Of course, the latest and very important news comes from Tokyo. The rescript from Emperor Hirohito, his message to the people of Japan, in which he tells them that their cause is lost. And I will read as much of the text as we have now in our headquarters here in New York, a text which will be coming in slowly since the Japanese translation must be made. The reports we are getting are coming from the Federal Communications Commission listening post, and the translations, as I said, are necessarily slow since Japanese is a difficult language. At least I would presume it's so since I have trouble on occasion with English. However, the rescript from His Imperial Majesty Hirohito of Japan begins, "To our good and loyal subjects, pondering deeply the general trends of the world and the actual conditions in our empire today, we have decided to effect a settlement of the present situation by resorting to an extraordinary measure. We have ordered our government to communicate to the governments of the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union that our empire accepts the provisions of the Potsdam Declaration. It goes on to strive for the common prosperity and happiness of all nations, as well as the security and well-being of our subjects, is the solemn obligation which has been handed down by our imperial ancestors and which we lay close to our heart. Indeed," the rescript continues, "we declared war on America and Britain out of our sincere desire to ensure Japan's self-preservation and the stabilization of East Asia, it being far from our thought either to infringe upon the sovereignty of other nations or to embark upon territorial aggrandizement." That third paragraph of the imperial rescript bears rereading. It's masterpiece. "Indeed," says Emperor Hirohito, "we declared war on America and Britain out of our sincere desire to ensure Japan's self-preservation and the stabilization of East Asia, it being far from our thought either to infringe upon the sovereignty of other nations or to embark upon territorial aggrandizement." While I read that third paragraph, a new paragraph has come into our CBS News headquarters, and the rescript continues. "But now the war has lasted for nearly 4 years. Despite the best that has been done by everyone, the gallant fighting of the military and naval forces, a diligence and assiduity of our servants of the state," emperors talk that way, "and the devoted service of our 100 million people, the war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage, while the general trends of the world have all turned against our interest." The translations of the rescript are coming in more rapidly now. We have another paragraph already, and it continues, "Moreover, the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, the power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking the toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight," Hirohito continues, "it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. Here, perhaps for the first time, we get at the core of this sudden collapse of Japan. There will always be arguments, perhaps in the history books that are written in the years and the centuries to come, as to what was the final weight that broke Japan. But here Hirohito indicates that our atomic bomb, which he describes as an instrument so powerful and so damaging that its effect is incalculable. Should we continue to fight, he says, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. We know that 2 atomic bombs dropped on Japan, one at Hiroshima, one at Nagasaki. We have the official reports, as the reconnaissance photographs showed them to be damage in one instance of 60%, in the other instance of 30%. But I don't think any of us yet have had sufficiently detailed reports from Japan to get a real idea of the power of this bomb. We can only guess that it must be a frightful thing, because we know that it vaporized a steel tower on which it was hung when it was first tested out in the deserts of the West in America. We know also that its effect, measured in percentage of damage to factories and to installations in the 2 cities upon which it dropped, was tremendous, that one bomb did the damage which on many occasions had not been done by any previous attacks with demolition bombs and incendiaries. Now, we have another paragraph of the text of the Hirohito rescript, which is being broadcast to the Japanese people by the Japanese radio, and that its continuity may be better and more clearly understood. I'm going to read the previous paragraph over again. You'll remember in that, Hirohito said, "Moreover, the enemy has begun to employ a new and most cruel bomb, The power of which to do damage is indeed incalculable, taking the toll of many innocent lives. Should we continue to fight, he continues, it would not only result in an ultimate collapse and obliteration of the Japanese nation, but also it would lead to the total extinction of human civilization. And now the rescript goes on, such being the case, how are we to save the millions of our subjects, nor to atone ourselves before the hallowed spirits of our imperial ancestors? This is the reason why we have ordered the acceptance of the provisions of the Joint Declaration of the Powers. This last paragraph is now added to in the 8th paragraph of the rescript from Hirohito. It says, we cannot but express the deepest sense of regret to our allied nations of East Asia, who have consistently cooperated with the Empire towards the emancipation of East Asia. And thus, in what may be among the last paragraphs of the imperial rescript, a farewell bid to the puppet governments which Japan set up in the torn and shattered countries into which she marched with her iron and steel and her frightful cruelty. The text is not now added to, although I have just had information that we are getting this text through the OWI and that they should have the credit for the translation and for the transmission of the text into our CBS World newsroom rather than the FCC. Now, the most significant paragraphs of the rescript as we have them so far are the last two but one. I will read them over again because there we will find Japan's legendary and traditional excuse through the ages to come for her surrender. It focuses all the attention on our atomic bomb. The two paragraphs, which I will read again and risk boring you because they are, I think, the heart of this message from the Japanese emperor, say, such being the case, how are we to save the millions of our subjects, nor to atone ourselves before the hallowed spirits of our imperial ancestors? This is the reason why we have ordered the acceptance of the provisions of the Joint Declaration of the Powers. That is a direct reference to our atomic bomb. There is no reference in the translation insofar as we have it now to the fact that Russia joined us in the war, that our fleet had destroyed the Japanese fleet, that our air forces reigned free and clear over the skies of Tokyo, that B-29s could drop thousands of tons of ordinary demolition bombs and incendiaries on any Japanese city they chose, that the Japanese army, where it had been met in the field, had been beaten. One factor stood out, that Japan's army had not been met in any great degree. The Japanese army has not been beaten in the field, and that may be, if we allow it to be, Japan's excuse for a resurgence to power, at least in her own people's hearts. We will take 15 seconds now for station identification, and then back here in the CBS newsroom. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.